Welcome to Legend Makers, the podcast where education's true heroes take center stage.
Shine like a ray from the sun. There's something people look for but never can find.
All right, we are back with another Legend Makers podcast, this time with Omar Delgado. Omar, how are you doing, man?
I'm doing great, man. Thank you so much for having me on this podcast.
Hey, my pleasure. My pleasure. Listen, let's get into it. I know we're going to have a lot to talk about because you and I were chatting before we opened up the recording, and it already seems like we're gonna be going here.
Yeah.
I'm going to let your note taker in here. Go ahead. We'll get a little transcript going on. So
Yes.
you are the director of educational technology and learning development. Let me just do this at Christopher Columbus High School in Miami, Florida. Yeah.
Correct. Yes.
Great. You're a 98 graduate.
I graduated from here in 1998.
Tell me about this. I have here in my notes that your passion for education was sparked by legendary teacher John Linsky.
That is my mentor and now my very good friend. Yes.
That's excellent. You'll have to tell me. So we'll get into that a little bit. And then you returned to CCHS in 2003 as a world history teacher.
Yep.
Later becoming the basketball coach.
Assistant basketball coach. Yeah.
Assistant. Okay, cool. And eventually the head of CCNN Live, which is the school's award-winning broadcast journalism program. How's that? Did I get it all?
Yeah, you got it. That's it in a nutshell.
Cool. All right. Well, welcome. Beyond what I just said there, tell us about yourself. Introduce yourself.
Well, I'm a 45-year-old Miami native. I pretty much grew up in the neighborhood I live in, except for the time I went to Florida State University. I went there for a little bit and came back. Just a Miami guy. I met my wife in 2005. She literally changed my life. She calmed me down, helped me become the man I am today. I have two beautiful boys, AJ, who's 12 years old, and Jude, who's 3. I love being a dad. I love being a husband, but this Christopher Columbus High School is my second home. My wife knows that she's never gonna have to worry about me running out on her or anything, because if I'm not home, I'm here. It's a great arrangement, but I really love my school. I'm very passionate about it. The brotherhood here runs really deep, and I'm just excited about being able to contribute to a place that made me into the man I am today. So,
Well, that sounds wonderful. I'm going to get into a bunch of that. Welcome, welcome, welcome.
thank you.
You're in the studio now. This
I
is
am.
cool.
Yep.
Ah, look at this. So tell us about that program, because it looks pretty incredible, and it's one of the world's nation's largest, not world, but this nation's largest.
We are currently the #1 high school broadcast program in the country.
Wow, that's amazing. And you've been with that program since 2000
6. I started in 2006. We started competing regionally and statewide in 2009, and then nationwide in 2014.
So tell me about the program. I'm curious. Tell me what goes on a day-to-day basis. How many students are you running? What do you guys do exactly? Looks like you got a nice setup there.
So, do you want me to tell you a little bit about the history of CCNN, and then we'll
Yeah,
get into
absolutely. Yeah, please. Yeah.
So CCNN has been around since 1991, before I even got to school here. For years, the gentleman that gave CCNN to me, his name is Sal Canella. He's retired. He lives in Tampa now. But he just thought that the school needed a broadcast program. And in the first couple of years, all it was just morning announcements, right? Just get on there. You say, hey, this is what's happening at Columbus today. And we moved on. He wanted to retire in 2006. And I taught, because every teacher needs to have a side hustle, right? I taught myself how to shoot video, edit, and I started my own videography company, just doing weddings and things like that.
Yeah.
My principal at the time was like, hey, Mr. Canella's retiring. And I was like, oh man, we're losing a legend. He's like, yeah, we need someone to run CCNN. I was like, okay, well, who's that going to be? He's like, you. And I was like, what do I know about that stuff? He goes, you know how to work with cameras? This is yours.
Cool.
And I started teaching in 2003. I was a history teacher. I still love history to this day. But I'm a tech head. I like technology.
Yeah.
And when video editing went from analog to digital, it was right up my alley. I learned a lot. I learned how to do it really quickly. So I just fell in love with the whole multimedia aspect of it. In 2006, they offered it to me. I started doing it, and it was kind of like I just show up in the morning, and I was like, man, there's got to be more to this, right? There's got to be more to this. So I started doing research and how I could get better. I called some friends in the local news station. I said, hey, I want to intern. They're like, you're 26 years old. What do you want to intern in a local news station for? I was like, I just want to learn this. And I did it for about 2 months, and I learned the business inside and out, and I started changing our show. But the kids were still kids. They just, hey, TV production in school, who cares, you know? And then I found an organization called the Florida Scholastic Press Association, and they actually competed. Like you had to like create content to compete against other schools. Now, at one point in my life, I was an athlete. Not anymore. My body just moves forward and backwards now. It doesn't go side to side.
I
I'm
hear
just
you, man. I'm
a
with
tread.
you.
Yeah, I'm a treadmill guy. I'll just get on the treadmill and head straight. But
I'm still, I mowed my lawn on Sunday. I'm still feeling it, man.
I know. So I played basketball. I was very competitive.
Uh-huh.
I wasn't the best or anything, but I loved competing, and I said, you know what? If I can get these kids competing, I think I could turn this into something. And we're
Yeah.
an all boys school, so like,
Oh, you are okay.
yeah, that's built in the culture here. And we started. I'll never forget. We went to our first district competition, and I got destroyed. I got
Wait, so what, how do you get destroyed in a broadcast competition? What are the criteria
That's
for
a good
winning?
question. There's multiple ways of competing. So you could
Uh-huh.
actually submit things online, or you can actually on the spot create content, right?
Okay.
So some of the things online, let's say they say, hey, submit your best feature package. And it's a
Okay.
story about someone you told, and you submit that. Or they'll tell you on the spot, hey, create a story. Here's your prompt, and you got to go do it. You got 5 hours to create this. And
Mm,
my boys, like, we weren't ready for that at all. We got destroyed.
okay.
Um, but there was a local school that did really well. And, I'm really big on educators should help other educators. Like, this is
Hmm.
a hard enough uh, uh, profession to be in it alone, right? But I also live in Miami, and you got to understand we're built differently down here. So um, I walked up to I'm not gonna say any names because
Uh-huh.
I don't want to speak ill about anybody,
Right.
but I walked up to the lady she dominated, right? And I said,
Uh-huh.
hey, I'm really impressed with your program. I think you did an amazing job, and I would love for you to teach me. Can you mentor me and help me get better? And this woman looked at me and was like, why would I help you?
Oh.
And I was taken back, and I was like, I don't know, teachers helping teachers. She's like, you teach at an all boys school. You're probably going to get good at this one day. I'm not going to help you beat me. Get out of my face.
Oh.
Now, one thing about me is,
Hey,
I,
now the competitive now you're
well,
fired up, right?
some people say I'm cocky. I think I'm confident, right? I just know that if I put my mind to something, I'm going to be good at it.
Uh-huh.
And I felt a surge in me at that moment. I was like, oh man, you just lit something up.
It's
I haven't
on.
felt, yeah,
Oh, it's
since I was
on.
a teenager playing basketball. So I looked at her in the face. I said, remember, she just destroyed me in
Uh-huh.
every single category. And I said, if you know I'm gonna be good at this, don't you want to be on my good side? So when I'm great, like, I help you out. She was like, oh, honey, by the time you get good at this, I'm gonna be retired. And I looked at her and I said, thank you.
See you
I
next year.
I went back. I went back into my room. I talked to my students. And when I tell you that I was laser focused on making
Mhm.
my school, at least in that competition, great. And that happened in 2008. And in 2009, I went back and I beat her in every single category.
Yeah.
Every category.
Okay. So, all right. You just struck a nerve with me. If anybody knows me
Right.
listening to this podcast, they're going to know that, all right, I just met my, oh God, this is great. So there's so many things in there I want to get to. Here's what I think is awesome about that. Not only that you came in and won, but this is what people don't tend to overlook is, you said something when you first walked in, it was just somebody doing a morning broadcast.
Yeah.
And then you went and interned and you learned and you took these incremental steps. There's no overnight, right? And people want to get from like A to Z really fast. And you did accelerate because you're laser focused. However, you knew in the beginning that it's just find out this little piece of information, then connect that dot to the next information, build the chain, right? Go and be humbled to go and intern at 26 years old to just why? Because I need to be in the environment so that I can learn,
Yeah.
right? Then having the cojones to take your juvenile, very ragtag probably group of dudes to go in and just say, you know what, we're not ready, but we'll never be ready. Like, let's just go, right? The best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is today, right?
Yep.
So boom, we go in, and that experience introduced you to this person that cleaned your clocks.
Yep.
Your students got to see what the world's all about, got to see what that environment looks like. They were put in a challenging situation. The great news is they did it, right? And then you got the competitive fire because somebody looked at you and said, oh, it stoked you. So I love that journey. And then a year later, you come back, dude, this is like Rocky story, bro. Like you come back and you're like, remember me?
Yep.
Boom. I got to tell you, I could end it right there because that's the coolest thing ever, but we're going to dive way deep. But for those listening, I just want them to appreciate the can-do attitude, the humility to go into something unknowing, like to enter into the void, just because why not, right? Like I have to, of being able to go and learn and having the being humble enough to go learn. I just think that there's so much in that one story that everybody can learn from, teacher or not, about what it takes to be successful is a mindset of whatever it takes, right?
Well, I tell my students every single day that I was good at things, but I was never great at anything until I started doing this. And to be great, the difference between being good at something and great is just the consistency to wake up every day and make a conscious decision to give your best effort. It doesn't have to be perfect, but every single day. And once you do that for a long period of time, you realize that you just walked a mile, you just climbed a cliff, a mountain. You just did things that were incredible because you stayed consistent every single day. And I really believe, and I'm really big into like reading people that were great at things and how they got to that. And every single time you read into it, it's not, some people are born naturally good, but the
But
people that are
few.
great are the
Yeah.
ones that never gave up. They just kept on working at something every single day. And I tell my kids, I took me until I was 36 years old to realize I was great at something.
Yeah.
You guys could be
Energy and
able to,
persistence.
and you
Energy
guys
and
could do it at
persistence
14.
conquers all. It's just it's the compound daily effect, right?
Absolutely.
Small incremental things over time compounded
Yep.
lead to big change. It's the 10-year overnight success.
Absolutely.
I love it. Do you listen to Founders, David Senra's podcast, Founders?
No, I don't, but if it's good,
Oh,
yeah, it's good. I'm gonna listen to
oh,
it.
he's reading 1,000 biographies of incredibly successful individuals, and
Love
he
it.
breaks them down. And you can even do founders notes where he's got all his notes from all. And what's great is you find these, you see consistencies and trends. So he'll be doing like a Michael Jordan bio, and then he'll go, do you remember when we were talking about the Estee Lauder bio? Remember
Right.
when we were talking about that thing that she would do? Well, notice how Michael Jordan, it's the same thing 70 years later, but
Right.
it's the same exact mindset. You can find these trends, and that's what his whole thing is what makes these people such great achievers. And usually it's smarts, but it's beyond smarts. It's consistency, it's
Well,
dedication, and it's like an obsessive
yes, that's what
every
it is.
single morning, every single day, just laser focused on an objective.
So I heard something maybe about, I don't know, 5 years ago, and it was I think it was like a 60 minutes take on Lin-Manuel Miranda, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which a lot of people call him the William Shakespeare of this generation, right? And I love Lin-Manuel. I think he does amazing work. But they were interviewing him, and he went to this really fancy art school up in New York. And I mean, he went to school with amazing actors,
Yeah.
producers, music producers, and they were like, "Why theater? Why Broadway?" And he goes, "I knew that I was surrounded by greatness, but they were all over the place." And I
Mm.
said, "This is my lane. I'm
Mm.
going to stick in this lane and I'm going to work at this thing better than anyone else has ever worked in it." And he goes, and it ended up being my passion. And look at all the doors it opened up. And it's true because some people say no to opportunities because they're like, "Oh, that's not something that I want to do." But they don't realize that that opportunity will open up another door and another door. And then you end up being this entity that is multifaceted,
Yeah.
a jack of all trades, because you decided to just concentrate on that one thing and be great at it. And you ended up falling in love with the process and becoming great at a bunch of other things, which fulfilled you more as a human being than it ever could have with your first initial thought of, oh, I have to do this the way this is because that's what society said. So, like, some people look at me and they're like, why do you take high school TV production so seriously? And I was like, well, I was put in charge of this. And if you're going to do anything in life, you should give it 110%. Yeah,
Show me how you do one thing, I'll show you how you do everything, right?
exactly.
So
Exactly.
your students, this is great because well, look, my hat's off to you
Thank you.
because that is exactly the way I try to live my life. I'm the same way. I People think I'm crazy. I'm somewhat obsessive. I'm up at 4 a.m. But
Yep.
I'm just excited about doing what I love to do. I feel like it's funny. I started what I do about 5 years ago. I made a shift. I realized in my early 50s that I was like, I'm not doing what I should be doing.
Right.
And things, one thing led to another thing, doors opened up, and I found myself in the education space working with kids and teachers, and I love it, right? I love
Right.
what I do, and I love building businesses. And I tell people I feel like I'm like a round peg in a round hole. I said it's the coolest feeling in the world to have that. Now, what I think is amazing is that as someone, do you work directly with the students anymore, or are you're overseeing?
Okay, so with CCNN Live, I
Mhm.
work directly with them, but since I've built this program, they made me also the director of all media, so I control the
Yeah,
school newspaper, the yearbook, and I have people that work for me through those things, but I still work hand in hand with the kids with our morning show, all our competition. I mean, we travel all around the country and
so cool.
compete. So yeah, yeah.
How many students in your program?
When I started, it was 7, and as of right now, it's 72.
72. You must be such an inspiration. So what I love about it is, we learn by seeing, right? So
Yeah,
you're a role model. You're an inspiration for these young men, and this is high school young men in Miami.
yeah.
Um, to watch you with the mindset, I'm sure it rubs off on a lot of these guys.
I tell a lot of parents tell me when their kids graduate that the best thing they got out of CCN. A lot of kids come in here and they don't even want to be journalists, right? They want to be a part of something that's bigger than them. And the
Yeah,
parents tell me the self-confidence that you gave my son and the motivation, the way they walk into a room and they control a room and they're very confident with the way they speak and the way they're able to talk to people is something that money can't buy. And that is honestly what wakes me up every morning and keeps me going. Because if I can
that's right.
inspire someone, there's a quote I once heard and I lived my life by it. It's like, I don't want to be the person that changed the world. I want to be the person that inspired the person that did. And I think
That's cool.
every educator should live by that.
That is educators, right?
Yeah.
And one day I'm sitting here as I'm talking to you, I'm imagining one of your students having a conversation with somebody, 15, 20 years from now, saying, I had this amazing mentor, teacher, Mr. Delgado. How, you're going to be someone's John Linsky one,
Yeah.
you
That
are.
would be
And I think
that's
that's
cool.
really cool. So,
Yes.
well, look, I think it's amazing. I want to get into, so you returned back. So tell me how you got back into teaching. So what brought you back into the schools? You graduate and then you go off and do what for a while?
So okay, so I graduated in 1998, and I will
Uh,
never forget in my speech and debate class, my speech teacher was just walking around the room asking us, "Hey, what do you guys want to do with your life?" And I remember that's the first time I was like, "What do I want to do?" And
mm,
I want to be a lawyer, I want to be a doctor. People are just saying it, and I looked at him and I said, "I want to be right back here. I want to be a teacher at Christopher Columbus High School."
why?
I feel at home here. Like there's no
Mm,
way to explain it. I feel like this is a place that makes boys into men, and it
mm,
really affected the person I was. And I said, and it wasn't even about the teaching. It was just I wanted to be back there and to help young men feel what I felt when I was here. And he looked at me. He goes, "Oh, that's awesome, Omar." And it was Mr. Scholler said that. And then I
uh,
started thinking for the first time. All right, well, what will I major in? And mind you, in the '90s, things weren't as advanced as they are today. But my history teacher was one of the most inspirational. Like I could tell you anything about the Vietnam War and the politics in that time during the Cold War because he taught me so well. And I
mm.
thought that I loved history. And I do love history. I should have not majored in history though. I should have majored in media or in technology or in
Uh-huh.
computers because that's where I ended up getting my master's later on in educational
Okay.
technology. But I went to college, I got my degree in history, And I came back and I started teaching. And it's not that I was a bad teacher. It's just that every day I got to school here and I was more interested in the one-on-one conversations and learning about my students than actually teaching history, right?
Yeah.
So as the years went by, I went from world history to American history to US government. And I still enjoy it. I get passionate when I'm doing it, but nothing like it was when I was teaching editing, or if I was
Yeah.
teaching, social media and technology and stuff like that. And then I got my master's degree in educational technology right around 2012, 2014. And that's when our school went from analog to one-to-one. So like all the kids got iPads. And
Yeah.
I
Okay.
had that degree and they made me the ed tech
Ah,
specialist. So
okay.
I created a team of tech teachers and we started innovating and learning new technologies and just expanding on how to teach with technology in the classroom. And that grew even more to the fact that where I was actually involved more in what software the school is going to buy,
Mm,
what hardware, how teachers are going to teach it. I'm really big into, I don't think teachers should just, and a lot of schools do this, and it's unfortunate, they just buy technology because they were sold an idea of technology. At
mhm,
Columbus, you have to sell me on the idea of technology, and I know my faculty. And then if I think it works, I will create a learning plan for them to understand how
mm,
to use that technology because if the teacher knows how to use it, the students are going to benefit more. If the
sure.
teacher thinks it's useless, you're going to give them a piece of technology and it'll stay on their desk all year long because they're going to teachers, we're creatures of habit. Like we're gonna do what always has worked for us because we're teachers, and if it worked once, it's gonna work forever. Unfortunately, the way education is going, that has to change, and it has to change really quickly. But I also understand that they might be hesitant to accept all these new things because
Mhm,
what's cool today is not cool tomorrow. And as a teacher, you don't want to invest in something that's going to be taken away from you. So I'm really big on learning how to use this, teaching teachers how to teach with it, and
mhm.
constantly being on the cutting edge of what's next, what's going to happen here, how do you use this in this class. That's what I'm really passionate about with my teaching degree, besides running this broadcast program.
So, what has an example of something that's been brought into the school that was like didn't succeed, didn't really big? Give me one of those. And then we're going to talk. The next one is, what do you think? You said of where it's going, and also I want to find
Oh,
out where your head is. I want to see what your crystal ball looks like a little bit, where you think things are headed.
I think smart boards are the biggest waste of money that ever existed.
Really?
Yeah, because it was a hot thing. I was like, oh, look, I could use this computer on the wall, and all it is a glorified chalkboard. That's all it is,
Yeah.
right? I mean, you could maybe do some extra things to it, but it had its time. Like I remember the first smart boards came into this school in 2004, and honestly, by 2014, which is a decade later, in my opinion, they're obsolete. People die by them. They're like, no, my smart board is the best thing. I can never teach without it. Well, we're an iPad school. Why the hell do I want to teach in the front of the classroom and turn my back to 20 something kids when I could just open up my iPad, AirPlay it to the board or any TV there,
Any
now,
TV?
and I'm walking around the classroom and these kids are now worrying, where the hell is Delgado? Instead of going, oh, he just turned his back to us. We can do whatever the hell we want. I get the
Right.
kids more engaged. I'm more interactive. I get to, if you know how to use your iPad or a MacBook and AirPlay it to the board,
Yeah.
the sky is the limit, and the kids are always interactive because they're like looking at you and you're keeping them engaged while they're teaching. And keeping this
Okay.
generation engaged is the most important thing because you're competing against iPhones,
Everything.
PlayStation 5s, MP3 player, the whole thing. If you're just up in the front of the board teaching for
Oh
45
man.
minutes, I mean, I hated it when I was a student, so I can imagine what they're going
Can you
through.
imagine today?
Yeah,
I know. We, with 10-second clip, mindsets and attention spans.
exactly,
That's brutal,
exactly.
right? How do
Yeah.
you? So, what do you think? You said like, and we're keeping your eye on where it's going. Where's it? What's next? Like, what's the big thing that you think's good, useful tech? Is it
Uh,
AI? Is it going to be AI?
it's 100. It's without a doubt. I
It's AI.
literally spend uh, 25 hours a week researching artificial intelligence and how to make it relevant in the classroom. If
It's
you're, I tell teachers this all the time, and I get a lot of, we run the gambit here. I think the youngest teacher we have here graduated from Columbus in 2019, and the
uh-huh.
oldest teacher graduated in 1958. So like
Wow. Wow.
we have a
Yeah.
broad spectrum of faculty
Uh-huh.
members. And I get people all the time. I'm like, why do you invest in this so much? This is gonna take our job. And I tell them all the time, AI is not gonna replace your job. A teacher that knows how to use AI is gonna replace you.
Take your job. Yeah.
Because it's like if you're a teacher and you're just giving assignments that, hey, go home and write this essay, that's useless. That's
Hmm.
useless. an artificial intelligence bot, a chat generative AI bot can write that 2 times better, 3 times as fast, and a student's not learning anything doing that, right? And I'm not saying that writing is not important. It is, but that's the kind of stuff that now they have to do in class, not at home. What you
Right.
should do, same assignment, let's say write an essay. Hey, go home and write an essay, but use artificial intelligence. And when the kid brings the assignment back in, all right, now you're going to use that artificial intelligence and yourself to grade the essay that you wrote at home. And
So cool,
now,
right?
yeah, now the kid is becoming the teacher. And I tell everybody
Yeah.
this, the best way to learn anything is to teach it to
Just,
someone else.
oh man, do you want to learn something? Teach it.
Teach it to
That's
someone.
the greatest thing in the world, right?
You'll
I
become an
love that
expert at it.
expression. Yeah,
Yeah.
I
So
just used AI. I got to tell you, you just told me. So here's the use case, and I agree with you 100%. I
Right.
think that you've got to learn how to use it, and you've got to really become a power user and understand the ways that you could. So I'll give you an example of how we just used it recently that I think is a great use case that doesn't just like, hey, write me a paper. So we were talking to a school district, and they were interested in our programs, and they wanted some outcomes information. And we don't run a true LMS, right? We do an after school enrichment program. We intentionally stayed away from data capture, but we get a lot of secondhand and firsthand observation data and feedback from teachers. So we get a lot of qualitative information coming back. So where is that stored and how is that retained? Well, they wanted some outcomes report. And so I said to one of my sales reps, I said, just let's get on a Zoom. I've been here 5 years. I've got a lot of these examples that I can start riffing on and tell you about. Well, this student this and this school did this, and then they tracked this way. And we recorded the whole session. And I just went off on 5 years of experiences and the different things I've heard teachers say. And then we took the transcript and we uploaded it. And we said, look, using the information in this transcript, we need to extract from this qualitative outcomes report, right? We needed a semblance of a report. So structure this report based on the transcript. And it did. And then of course you got to go back in and you've got to look at it and you've got to make sure that the content's accurate and you've maybe got to proofread it and edit it and this and that. And then you can punch holes in it. But the bottom line, the takeaway is that what we came out with was a really great report. Quite frankly, I sent it to my sales team and said, this tells our story. Like, this is pretty remarkable. That's a great use case, I think.
how long would that have taken you if you didn't have
Oh
AI?
my gosh, to try to draft that and come up with it, and it took under an hour
Let me tell you something.
from
Most
beginning to end.
one of the most creative ways I've ever used it, right, is broadcasting. We transcribe interviews. I'm sure
Yeah,
you do with the podcast as well.
yeah,
And one of my biggest things I would tell the kids is when you after you transcribe it, you read it, you find the moments that you think that are gonna, and then you highlight it, and then you find it on video. So what I tell my kids to do now is when you're doing an interview, just have your iPhone next to it and record it on your notes app because
Yeah.
it does a live transcription.
yeah,
Then you get that transcription and you put it in ChatGPT or Gemini, and you
yeah,
tell Chat, I want you to analyze this transcription of an interview I just did and tell me the most impactful moments.
yeah.
Bam, 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 bam. You just saved yourself
So
hours.
much time.
And now you could just
So
go to those
much time.
moments and see if the visuals match what was said. And now you can edit a package so much faster. It's an ethical way of using AI.
Sure
It's
is.
practical, and it made you a better journalist. It made you a better broadcast media maker.
Absolutely, because it's a lot of rote work.
Yep.
You also can help personalize learning for students, right? So where before one curriculum was for all, you can now you have time because of the time speed. You can do personalized learning plans based on your students' behavior, learning patterns.
Have you heard of the Alpha School?
I have not.
Okay, so Alpha School.
Wait, is that in Texas?
Well, the first one was in Texas. Mackenzie Price created it.
Mackenzie, yes, it's Mackenzie. I've been following her recently. I love her content.
She's amazing. She has like 15 schools around the country. She just
love
opened
it.
one up, not even 5 minutes away from my school, right? And her concept is it's 2-hour learning, pretty much. They use the Pomodoro method where students will come to school every day. They start off with some kind of physical activity, but then they have 2 hours with an AI computer that teaches them. But imagine having education personalized exactly how you learn.
Yeah.
what the problem with teachers is that we teach in a classroom with 25 kids and we're only as strong as our weakest link. If you're a good
Yeah.
teacher, right? If
Right.
you're a good teacher, you're not going to let someone fall behind. You're going to teach so that they can keep the pace. What happens to your advanced learner there? They don't get the whole package,
Right.
because
Right.
they're being taught at a slower pace, so they might get bored, disruptive. You're trying to push them on their own, so they're learning on their own, so you can keep the lowest common denominator up to
Yeah.
par. If
Yeah.
you're a different type of teacher, you're just teaching at a certain pace and everyone has to keep up with you. That's wrong too, because if you're
Yeah.
an educator and you're a real educator, you want to teach everybody, but
That's
that's
right.
really difficult.
That's hard.
Scott, I mean, there's only a couple hours in the day, and to create one lesson plan takes a couple hours. Imagine creating 25 of them.
Yeah.
Well, the beautiful thing about this school is that they teach for 2 hours. The AI adjusts to how you learn. So think about it. For a teacher to teach 25 kids, it takes 9 months, right? To get to
Yeah.
a certain part. If I get taught individually to exactly how I learn, how much faster am I going to learn stuff?
So fast.
Well, and that's the
Incredible.
thing. When Mackenzie figured out, she creates a baseline, and then some kids, let's say they're in ninth grade, but they have a seventh grade reading level, she drops them down to seventh grade, and she teaches that foundation again. But what happens is they end up catching up to where they're supposed to be and surpassing it
Rapidly.
within months, because they were taught just for how they learn.
That's
Where
right.
the AI will learn it. Now, I'm saying this, and you might have other educators going, I can't believe this kid's talking about this. Jesus, man. It's gonna ruin it for all of us. No, because there still needs to be an education,
A
that
person.
one-on-one, that
Yeah.
personal aspect of
It
it.
sure
No
does.
computer's ever gonna take that away from
No.
you. And if you know how to connect with your students and you can educate, just let me ask you this, Scott. You went to high school. Do you remember your teachers? Do you
Yeah.
remember the people that helped you out with your clubs and sports more? Or do you remember learning English in 12th grade?
Clubs and sports.
Of course, because you made that
Coaches.
connection, those coaches, those
But there were some
advisors.
teachers too. I remember, and some of those teachers taught like a coach. So, I was thinking, while you were talking, we just had somebody on a few weeks ago, and they were talking about, it was maybe even history. And they were like, no, it was English. And they're like, I wanted to be an English teacher. And then when I got my English degree and started teaching English, I realized it wasn't the English that I loved so much. It was the teacher that taught me the English that inspired me to be
Same
that
thing
was your
happened to me,
experience,
John.
right?
Yeah.
Like that was the thing. You were like, well, whoa, it wasn't necessary. I like history. It's all good. But what I realized is that the person behind that was what drew me to it, not the history, but the teacher teaching it. We are humans. We need connections. And what I would argue is that if you become proficient in utilizing the tool, that you can free yourself to be more personal with your students. Instead of spending all night grading, instead of spending all day writing lesson plans, instead of this, you can shrink the time required for that rote administrative work.
The tedious part of teaching is creating lesson plans and notes and
Yeah.
quizzes and all that stuff. And with artificial intelligence, what usually take you 5 hours a week can take you 15 minutes.
Yeah.
You have now 4 hours back of your life that you can actually do something else. You can make money. You can be more present with your family. You can become a better educator and advance your degrees. Whatever it is, you have more time because you use this artificial intelligence. And people have to stop being afraid of it and start learning it, because
It's here.
It's not going anywhere,
It's
and it's
not
going to
going
take
anywhere.
over education if educators keep fighting back on it.
It will in some way, shape, or form. I've been following Mackenzie around. It's pretty wild that you brought her up, because that Alpha School is like, I'm looking at that going, that is cool.
She's amazing.
The entrepreneur in me wants to create one over here in Jersey. I'm like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm just, because I'm in the space and I'm like, I can't help but see business opportunities where I see them and going, oh, like this would be cool to have something like that out here. So,
absolutely.
I mean, I could geek out with you on this subject forever. And I do want to argue with this one last point about the AI is that I think that, to your point, if it frees up time, whether that's time to focus on more students or time to go home and enjoy home life, I think you'd be a better teacher for it, because you come back into the classroom. If you're getting to spend time with your family and you're not stressed to the nines about lesson plans and grading and this and that, and you're having AI can free up all that stuff,
You're going to be a
you're
better
going to be
teacher.
a better teacher in the classroom. You're more present with your students, less stressed out.
And you're and this retention rate is going to go up instead of down like it's going, because people are going to want to be teachers again. I
Yeah.
remember growing up and watching Growing Pains and watching Mike Silver like turn in from the troublemaker into the teacher, and he
Yeah.
had a passion for that.
Yeah.
And I remember teachers growing up having passion for it, and then somewhere around the mid 2000s, people stopped having that passion. And
Yeah.
they're like, I can't believe this is so much busy work. And it's a lot. Administrators are asking more and more from their
More and
teachers.
more.
They're not giving them more time. And it's a lot. And I understand the administration side of it also, because they need the data. They need to have meet compliances with state and all that stuff. But the teachers are not being paid more, and they're being asked to do more. So if artificial intelligence can level that playing field
Hmm.
to let us teach and do what we do best, and all that other stuff gets taken care of behind closed doors and automatically, that's a win-win.
Yeah.
But
And then on the student side, now
oh,
they've got to learn how to use it the right way as well, right? So there's what do you see from the student side? So we talked about how teachers, it can benefit teachers. Yeah, there's a threat there. There's a threat in everything, right? But there's also a huge opportunity.
but Scott, let me ask you a question. You said
Uh-huh.
there's a threat there. When has technology in the history of humanity come in, improve something, and jobs got lost?
Yeah, never.
Never.
Well, jobs got lost, but others were born.
Well, others were born, and people
Yeah,
just moved into
they
that
move
other.
in.
And
The
so
internet was going to take everybody's thing, right?
right,
I
and look
do
what
think
happened.
I do think though that this is something that I mean, this makes the internet. I think this pales in. I mean, I'm getting up there. So I was in my early 30s, no, late 20s
Right.
when the internet was just coming around, right? I went back to school late. So I remember I was literally, I'm glad I did. I'm so glad. It's funny how things happen. I didn't go back to school till I was like 24, 25. You know, I came in to be an art major and then was like, that's not for me. And then I just became a bartender and played around for about 5 years. And, you know, I got stuck in the Philly party zone for a while. And,
Nice.
but in retrospect, it was great because then when I went back to school, all the people that I graduated with kind of lost out on the opportunity of the internet and like what I take for granted now of all the technology and how to use it. Like when I entered into business, I was using web crawler and Gopher to get into St. Joe's. I was the first person. I lived off campus. I bought a PC in like 1992
Right.
and I was online. I had a modem in my little apartment, and we would be doing like papers. And I remember being so fascinated that I could get into the St. Joe's database, like, you know, legitimately. They gave me access. I had a key and it was web crawler and Gopher. And I could get into like LexisNexis and research for so like my teams would come over to my apartment and we would be doing our papers and stuff using online data, which in 92, 93 was unheard of.
Heard of.
And so thank goodness that I did take that kind of hiatus because I ended up in the thing. I lived through that transformation, right? So I literally came up with email and I remember what's this Google thing? And I remember what's Amazon. I was in my 30s. I was in business, right? I just came out and I had my first real job and I've got a laptop and I'm working. And I think that what we're seeing with AI is going to
It's going to revolutionize everything.
make the internet look like child's play.
So you and I are very similar. I'm a Gen Xer technically, but my
Yeah.
generation is really a Zennial, right? I'm a mix between millennials and Gen X. I was born in 79. So
Okay.
I had, up until I was 10, 11 years old, an analog childhood. Like I was,
Yeah.
go outside, you can come back home when the lights turn on. And, you know,
Yeah.
like that's
Yeah.
a latchkey kind of kid. Like that's what I grew
Yeah.
up in. But my adolescence and my teenage years, that's when I had my first computer in 92, a Tandy sensation. I'll never forget it. And I grew
Nice.
up in my teenage formative years with
Yeah.
instant messaging and internet. And then I had
Yeah.
my first cell phone when I was 19 years old. And
Mhm.
I grew up with that. So I have the best of both worlds. I understand
Yes.
I understand your generation and then how
Yeah.
some of them are very hesitant about this technology. But I also understand like the kids that grew up with it, because technically I did too.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you this, my life got significantly better when I included technology in it in education, because in the 80s and 90s, I didn't know I was a special needs kid. I have severe processing issues. No one
Okay.
knew that,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
And I remember being at Florida State University and taking a special eds class, and the teacher's talking about kinetic learning. And I was like, wait a minute, that's me. And I went from being a C, D student to being on the dean's list. All I
Nice.
did was I started bringing my laptop to school. And while the teacher was teaching me and lecturing me, my brain wasn't shutting off. I was researching while the teacher was doing it. My brain was super active now. And I learned, man, if I didn't have this computer, I would have spent the rest of my life thinking I was stupid.
Mm,
And
mhm.
now I honestly, and again, confidence, not cocky. I think I'm one of the most intelligent people when it comes. If you put a phone or a computer in my hand, I can compete with anybody. If I don't have that with me, I am,
Yeah.
out of luck because my brain doesn't work that way. I
Yeah.
can't be. If you put, I'm the worst student, right? Like, because if you sit in front of me and you lecture me for 45 minutes, I'm shutting my brain off. I can't learn that way. But
Right.
if you just plant an idea in my head and tell me, go figure this
Go
out,
figure it out.
I will research and I'll have music playing on my phone and I'll be
Hmm.
researching it on Wikipedia or on Google, or I'll be setting up phone calls and talking to people one on one, and I will learn the
Yeah.
material. But we didn't have that in the 80s. We didn't have that in the early
No.
90s. So imagine how many people grew up thinking they were stupid when they just needed a computer in their hand.
Yeah. Technology.
Yeah.
It does help. I'm with you. So AI is the future. How are we going to teach our kids to use it? So what's that learning model look like for the students?
So
I mean,
this is the
you've already
best,
told me a little bit about how you had them show me
right?
how you're going to
So
extract the key bullets out of the.
they're teaching the teachers how to teach with it, but teaching the students is a little bit more difficult because everybody wants to get the low hanging fruit, right?
Yeah.
And you remember, like, if there was a shortcut to doing a project when we were younger, I was taking it 100%. And I don't care if it was having someone do a report for me or finding just when you're a kid, you're gonna act like a kid. So the
Yeah.
temptation of having AI just give you the answers is always gonna be there.
Yeah.
We have to teach kids that yes, just because that temptation was there doesn't mean that that's the right way to do things. We
Right.
have to teach them that they have to use it as a tool, the same way we use the calculator. When the calculator first came, I remember my elementary school teachers telling me, don't rely on that thing. You're not gonna have a calculator in your pocket for the rest of your life. Really? I have a calculator in my pocket everywhere I go.
That's right.
You were wrong, right? But if they
Mhm.
would have taught me how to use a calculator better, I would have been able to do math that was never even possible. And
That's
that's what
right.
ended up happening. The calculator didn't make us dumber. We started doing math that was never done before. And
Mhm.
AI is gonna make us better humans. It's gonna make us more intelligent. I know the easy way to say it's, oh, it's giving us all the answers. You know what happens to me? All right. I told you I'm learning disabilities, right? I don't know if you've ever seen this show, but The Big Bang Theory, right?
Oh yeah, yeah, for sure.
Okay, so
Yeah.
Sheldon Cooper, super nerd, talks about quantum physics. I'm watching this show and I'm like, "Ha, quantum physics, man, this guy must be a genius." And then I remember going, well, let's see if I could learn quantum physics. And I took out ChatGPT and I said, I want you to explain to me the basics of quantum physics, but like if I'm ordering a fast food menu at McDonald's,
Yeah.
and they broke it down. And when I tell you that I could sit down with someone, and I'm not an expert on it, but I can hold my own on quantum
You
mechanics
can have a discussion about it.
because I taught myself a complex topic in a very simplified way. And I didn't take the shortcut where just tell me what quantum physics is. I told the AI to teach me, and that sparked more conversations and more
Totally.
questions, which
Yeah.
made me became addicted to learning because it was so easy for me to learn. And a lot more people, they might not admit it, are like that. Educators don't want to hear that. Teachers don't
Mhm.
want to hear that because it makes them feel obsolete. We
Mm.
have to stop as educators thinking that we're the gatekeepers of knowledge. What we have to become are the guides to knowledge. We are no longer the ones that are going to be expelling information. We are the ones that are going to tell our students, this is where you find it. Here you go. And we have to guide them on the way. We have to make that learning process easier, more self-sufficient. If we could get people that learn, it's like that old proverb: if you give a man a fish, he'll eat for a day. If you teach a man how to fish, he'll eat for a lifetime. We have to teach our students how to use this so they can be lifelong learners.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Boy, you know, I'm tempted to pause there because that is such a great like wrap, but I've got so many more things I want to talk to you about. So you just described like the hero's journey
Yep.
and your students being the hero and the teachers being the guide. And that's I think where we need to go, right? But it used to be the gatekeepers of knowledge. You taught knowledge. Now it's teach how to learn, how to
Well,
become learners.
I disagree with you there. It used to not be that because
No, okay.
beginning of education, the most basic form of education was the master and the apprentice. And the master didn't
True,
show
true,
people to
true,
do things. They would guide
true.
them until that apprentice became a journeyman and then a master himself. We used to guide people to education, but Rockefeller created this school system where
That's what
we,
I'm talking
you
about. The
know,
early
yeah,
1900s, the model that we've kind of still live under to a
but
degree,
he
right?
made that model to create workers, not to create free thinkers and
I'm with
educators.
you.
And
Yes,
that's
to
the
create,
problem. We got to
right.
come back to becoming the guides to knowledge so that people can become lifelong learners so that they're not held down by anything. There's nothing that's going to stop them. We should be able to feel that we can learn anything at any point in time. And that makes us dangerous as a human
We're
race.
living in a time of change for education. Education's going to go through such a major disruption.
Yeah.
And in a
Yes,
good way,
absolutely.
I think you're right. It was born, the model that we've lived under for the last 100 years or more has been designed to create compliant workers,
Yep.
right? Can you show up on time? Can you answer yes, no? Can you toe the line? Not critical thinkers. In fact,
Exactly.
critical thinkers weren't, no, 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 we don't want that. That's disruptive, right?
Absolutely.
We now need critical thinkers. I think character, I went to the school I got sent to was before its time. I was sent off to Maine when I was like 14 in like 1980, and it was called
Right.
Hyde School, and it was a character education school. We were so screwed up, me and the people up there, that they didn't even, academics was like third on the priority list.
Right.
We had sports was number one
Yeah.
because we had to compete. We had to get into and they chose what sports. Everybody had to take sports. We were in performing group. Everybody
Yep.
had to perform. Everybody had to get up on stage and sing or do something. We had like a whole sound stage, and
Well,
then
honestly,
academics, and it
that's
was that
why that's why the Alpha School is being so successful. That's why this program I have here is so
so
successful
successful.
because it's not about teaching, it's about do it and I'll guide you to how to figure it out. I'm not
I
going to give
love
you
it.
the answers. I'm going to open the door for you to walk through and figure that answer out by yourself.
So I think I love it. So I understand why you teach. Now we've just kind of covered off on where you think the opportunities are. So I'm looking at the time here, and I'm going to wrap this up. Send us out with like your optimism, your you know, send us off with a really great optimistic sign
All right.
off, right?
So this is I'm going to tell you what I tell educators, right? Um there's two ways to attack what's about to happen. You could be afraid, you could be worrisome, you can always be questioning everything in every corner of the way, and there's a place and time for that. Or you could jump into the deep end of the pool, learn how to swim and be ahead of everyone else. Jumping in the deep end of the pool is scary because
Mhm.
you're afraid of drowning. But
Mhm.
if there's a will, there's a way. And I rather stumble on the way to the top than be pulled from the bottom.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the best way I can say it. Learn
Dive
it,
in.
dive in, and figure it out. And there are people like me out there. And anybody wants to reach out to me, my email is odelgado@columbushs.com. Email me, and I will happily help anyone out there that needs the help. Because I don't
Oh,
want to be like that
Delgado.
teacher
Yeah.
that told me no in the beginning of TV. I want to help as many people as possible so that they all can succeed.
So we're going to link your email in the show notes. So for people watching or listening on YouTube or listening on RSS or one of the Apple things, we'll put it in the show notes. The other thing is, do you have any resources? Like, it's always nice to link to some cool things. Is there books or podcast? I think you need to listen to Acquired because you're going to love it. Just because if you're a junkie of reading books about bios and successful people, Acquired is such a great listen. David Senra's great. You're gonna love it. I highly recommend it to everybody. Do you have a go-to? Do you like to listen or read or something?
I read a lot, and my two favorite books is one of them is called The Greatest Salesman in the World. I always pronounce the author's name wrong, but it's a quick read. It's 100
I
pages long.
remember that one. It's a great
Yeah,
book.
and it's got
Uh-huh.
a great quote, and I live my life by this quote. It's called "I will persist until I succeed." Which means
Yes.
I'm going to succeed because I'm never going to give up. And the second book that I just finished reading because so many people mentioned it to me was Marcus Aurelius's Meditations.
Oh, wonderful.
I mean, one of the greatest things that I mean, that is the greatest Roman emperor of all time, right? That's
Amazing,
Caesar,
right?
amazing. And did you know that he had a slave that he would keep next to him, and that slave would just be behind him every single time, just tapping him on the shoulder, telling him, "You're just a man. There's nothing special about you. You're just a man,"
Right.
because it kept him
Amazing.
grounded. It kept his
Amazing.
level headed. Because ego's a big problem in education, in business, everywhere you go, ego's a problem. But if you realize you're just human and you're doing amazing things, just being human, the sky's the limit.
Yeah, I love the stoicism stuff.
Yeah.
I love it. I'm one of these crazy. I write every morning. This
Yeah.
book's great too. If you're looking for another good book, I don't know if you know Robert Greene. He wrote the 48 Laws of Power.
Okay, no, but
48 Laws of Power gets dinged. A lot of people think it's super Machiavellian, and in a lot of ways it is. But Robert wrote it for the purpose of it wasn't. He studied how people acquire and maintain power, and he did it because he was the victim of those people. And so
right.
he wanted people to understand when you're in the presence of wolves. So he wrote the 48 Laws of Power, which is a great read. And I highly recommend it because it's a lot about human nature. And he draws from ancient history and present
Love it.
time history too. So you'll love that. Robert Greene,
Yep.
but he's got this book called The Daily Laws, and he draws from a lot of his reading. And these are the 366 meditations. So each month is a theme, and
Okay.
each day is an excerpt on that theme.
I
So
love it.
for example, May 8th is, right now we're talking about right now you're talking about the hidden players, right? Like, wow, how some people, there's a lot of like the
Right.
courtesans. But yeah, I think if you're a reader, you'll love these books. I love them. And for sure, Marcus Aurelius, and I love The Greatest Salesman in the World. It's such a
Yep.
great little book. You're right. You could
Yep.
consume that. That's like one you keep with you and you
I have it next to my
highlight.
bed, and I
Yeah.
literally read quotes of it all the time.
Yes, yes.
So,
And the persistence is, I don't know where the quote comes from, but energy and persistence conquers all.
yeah, that's a great quote. That's a great quote.
Well, on that note, Omar, it's been great to talk to you. I could talk to you for hours. I'm sure we probably will. We're going to stay connected.
I appreciate
We're
it,
going to
Todd.
link to this. We're going to link to your email. We'll link to your Twitter, X, LinkedIn. We'll do all that so people know where to find you. But thank you so much for joining me today. This has been amazing.
Oh man, thank you for the opportunity. I really enjoyed it.
All right, dude.
Thanks.
Talk soon. All right,
Bye.
bye.